In Invincible, we have had countless villains that have destroyed cities and even planets, showing us that no one is truly, especially in the eyes of the law. So today, let's look at what each villain would be charged with for their crimes and how long they would go to jail for. Starting off with the person who started it all, Omni-Man. Right out of the gate, he has multiple counts of murder. Him killing the Guardians of the Globe was one of the most brutal scenes, starting the list strong. Red Rush's skull was crushed between Omni-Man's hand, which counts for one charge of first-degree murder. Followed by Darkwing, who was smashed to the ground, his brains exploding with the impact, which adds another charge. Then Omni-Man punched through Green Ghost, killing her, adding yet another charge of first-degree murder. King Aquarius, Martian Man, and War Woman were all killed by Omni-Man. Add 3 more charges. Immortal is the only exception because he doesn't actually die, resulting in a count of second-degree murder. Just in the first episode, Omni-Man has 7 life sentences for this one scene. So far, so good. In episode 2, after announcing that Earth wasn't theirs to conquer,
"You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer."
He wipes out the entire Flaxan species. There are an estimated 7,800,074,673 Flaxans on that planet. Now, the sentence for genocide includes fines. Earth is estimated to be 5 quadrillion, and if this was applied to the world of Flaxans, then Omni-Man's charge would have a death sentence and a 5 quadrillion fine. Adding this to the list, we're looking at a death sentence, 7 life sentences, and a smooth 5 quadrillion fine. He unironically adds yet another charge while trying to teach Invincible to be a superhero. After telling Invincible that he needs to scare a villain by making him think he will actually drop him to get a confession, Omni-Man takes the villain by the foot and lets go while being high up in the sky. This adds a simple reckless endangerment charge to the list with 3 years in prison.
I'll never tell!
Now what?
Make him think you'll actually drop him.
I can hear you!
All right, here, I'll show you.
Okay, but you're gonna catch him, right?
Yeah, in a second.
Then, we have the time when GDA officers raided his home to arrest him. After killing 5 officers right in the middle of his home, he would also be charged for causing Donald's death despite not being the one to deal the killing blow. This adds 6 more counts of second-degree murder, increasing his total from 7 life sentences to 13. Then, he goes on a hunt for Invincible, trying to find him before Cecil could tell him the truth, so he intimidates William by putting a dent in his car to try and get some information. Now, intimidation gives him another 4 years in prison, especially since William is still a minor at this point. And after giving him that 5 quadrillion fine, we will also hand him a grand $250 fine for that dent in William's car. Then he tries to kill Cecil a total of 5 times in one scene, but would only be charged for 1 attempted murder charge since he didn't succeed. His list currently stands at a death sentence, 14 life sentences, 7 years in prison, and 5 quadrillion $250 in fines. But it doesn't stop there. He once again kills Immortal in this next scene, but because he is revived later, this only adds another second-degree attempted murder. Omni-Man's life sentences just became 15. Next up, in the flashback scene where he is shown joining the war efforts for Viltrum, he commits several war crimes, which adds another death sentence to his list. He then kills a pilot to prove a point to Invincible and adds yet another second-degree murder charge and another life sentence. Now, the death count for the Chicago scene is 2,731, and this can be counted as mass murder. So, he would get a life sentence for each person he killed and a death sentence to top it all off. His life sentences now stand at a cool 2,747. As for property damage, there are 77 cars in this road scene, which adds a $1.54 million fine, with each car estimated to be $20,000. The 13th story building that falls with Jessica and Gretchen Duvall is estimated to be $120 million, which would also have to be paid by Omni-Man. The train that he damaged is estimated to be $1.58 million per car, and there are 12 cars in the scene, bringing the total to $18.96 million for this train, with an extra $10 million for the subway damage. And that brings us to his next charge, which is extreme child abuse through all of these scenes. Mark is only 17 in this season. Torture or intentional maiming earns him another life sentence. And it's not like his charges end here. Even after becoming good, he stages a prison break and kills one of the Viltrumites along with Alan, earning him another 2 life sentences. All in all, Omni-Man has an impressive 3 death sentences, 2,750 life sentences, 7 years in prison, and 5 quadrillion $150,562,000,000 $1,250,000 fine. We all know that he lives for thousands of years, but I doubt even he could live out all of his life sentences. Let's continue this list with probably one of the only victims who deserved what Omni-Man did to them, the Flaxans. They were one of the only people who the heroes genuinely struggled with defeating. During the first invasion, the Flaxans teleport into the downtown area of the city, where they begin killing every human they see. The police attempt to fight back, but are easily outgunned and outnumbered by the Flaxans. Invincible spots one of the Flaxans about to murder an old woman and throws a piece of debris at it, hurting the Flaxan, who will later be one of the leading generals of the later invasion. Invincible saves the old woman, but due to tripping while flying, the woman's legs are bashed and she is in critical condition. Right after this, the injured Flaxan gets into one of the tanks and aims at Invincible. However, Adam Eve saves Invincible, deflecting the laser. The rest of the team arrives, but they are outnumbered by the Flaxans and cannot fight them off. However, the Flaxans start to die of old age as the time on their planet and on Earth is very different. This leads to the death of a large amount of the invasion force. The remaining Flaxans escape through the portal they came out of, including the Flaxan injured by Invincible. In the end, with the heroes barely succeeding in containing the attack, the Flaxans ruthlessly killed 339 innocent people. Under the law, these actions would be classified as war crimes and acts of terrorism, and so there would be a death sentence and a life sentence for each of the people killed. Along with this, there would be a $40,000 fine for 2 of the police cars they damaged, $40 million for the 2 background buildings, and an estimated $30 million for the road reconstruction. All of these charges would fall on the Flaxan leader, as the army would say that they are just following orders. In their second attempt to invade Earth, the Flaxans emerge from the portal once again. The Flaxan that Invincible injured returns as well, apparently having risen through the ranks and leads the invasion. The Flaxans are seen with better technology and have studied the powers of the team. They deploy sentries with powerful cutting lasers, along with wristbands modes to prevent them from getting old due to the time stream of Earth. It took 3 days in Earth time for them to attack again, however, it was decades in time for the Flaxans. The team has little to no chance of winning until Invincible notices that destroying their wristbands causes them to get old. Robot analyzes the wristbands and sees that they have a frequency of 49,000 kilohertz. This lets them emit a frequency that promptly destroys all the wristbands. The Flaxans are once again fended off, but the leader escapes. In this attack, they killed 6 more people, 5 more cars, moderate damage to buildings, and the road reconstruction would bring the total to another $51 million. Thinking the third time's the charm, they come back again. This time, they came equipped with advanced technology that even Invincible cannot fend off. Their leader now dons armor resembling a mech, and the Flaxans have rendered themselves immune to Earth's time stream. Team tries to fight back, but fails, and Invincible finds himself pinned down by the leader. Just as Invincible is about to be beaten to death, Omni-Man arrives to rescue him, throwing the leader off. Although the Flaxan forces shoot at Omni-Man, their attacks have no effect. He begins to fight back, defeating the attackers and driving them away. Instead of allowing them to escape, Omni-Man follows the Flaxans through their portal, launching an assault on their civilization, where he kills the leader and many other Flaxans.
Are you okay, Mark?
For this attack on Earth, there were 3 casualties. As for property damage, there was some damage to buildings, the road construction, and the bridge that the leader smashed, bringing the total to about $31 million. In the end, the Flaxan leader would have a death sentence for each of the 3 attempts, 348 life sentences, as well as a $1 billion, $52 million, and $40,000 in fines. Speaking of villains who don't give up, next up on our list are the Mauler Twins. Contrary to the name, the Mauler Twins are not really twins. In truth, Mauler was a mad scientist who perfected a process to clone himself, intending to have someone around that shared his intellect and could competently help with his fringe science experiments. Since it's never stated how many times the cloning process had occurred, and there's no evidence to suggest that the twins' first appearance included the true original, in all likelihood, the Mauler who provided the genetic template for every clone may have died before the start of the series. Cloning human life is banned everywhere with $1 million in fine and 10 years in prison. So, right in the first episode, they stack one such charge. Then they commit an assassination attempt on the president president, which earns them a life sentence. The public endangerment would earn them 20 years in prison and $150,000 in fines. It would also stack per individual, and there are 13 civilians in the scene and 5 years for each. So in total, they would have been given 85 years in prison for one twin. As for property damages, they damaged the White House, which has a worth of about $500 million. The road would be another $5 million, with yet another building estimated to be $50 million. So far, they have 2 life sentences, 170 years in prison, $555 million, and $150,000 in fines. And that's just in the first episode. In episode 3, one of the twins severely injures an officer called Pete, earning them an attempted murder charge and another life sentence. The prison break resulted in the death of multiple officers, adds another life sentence to each of them. The property damages add another $5 million to their fines. And then, one charge that isn't shared between the two is one of the Maulers killing his own clone, which earns him a second-degree murder and another life sentence.
I'm surprised you don't see it. You being the original and all. I'd say I'll miss you, brother.
The surviving Mauler clones himself yet again and then helps robot clone Rex's DNA. Both of this add $2 million to their fines and 30 years more in prison. They also burn down their own lab, adding another $10 million in fines and an arson charge, which gives them 25 years each in prison. When working with Angstrom, the Maulers from alternate dimensions altogether are charged with a life sentence each for attempting to kill Invincible. This scene alone gets them 11 life sentences. After that, King Mauler clones himself again, adding $1 million and 10 years more in prison. When the clone kills King Mauler, he would then be charged with first-degree murder and a life sentence. Then, the clone clones himself yet again after King Mauler, adding another charge. Honestly, I'm surprised at just how many times they cloned themselves. But fortunately, this would be the last time, at least when it comes to the show. Because these two then hatch a plan to take over the Wyoming military base in Anderson after being inspired by the Lizard League. This would earn them a death sentence each. Damage to the building, being a nuclear system, would earn them another death sentence each, with a life sentence for each of the 5 officers they killed on the way. However, the Maulers aren't able to do much more damage since Oliver arrives on the scene and quickly kills both of them. If even one Mauler stands for trial, his charges would count everything done by his clones as well. Their total would be 4 death sentences, 28 life sentences, 270 years in prison, $575 million, and $150,000 in fines. But the list of self-proclaimed geniuses didn't end in this show. One such scientist is D.A. Sinclair. In episode 6, 3 girls are approached by a drunk boy who tells him he is Doug Cheston, son of the owner of Cheston Pharmaceutical and half the university. They realize his father had elevated prices on medicine, and he tells them that he would inherit everything soon, offering them sex, but they refuse. Right after they leave, Doug is attacked from behind and put to sleep. When Doug awakens, D.A. Sinclair tells him that he would have been turned into a brave explorer. Doug calls him a nerd, but he finds he is bound and trapped in a basement with multiple cyborgs. He looks at his arm, with his forearm missing and replaced with a robotic prosthetic, which terrifies him. Since he did not stay quiet, D.A. Sinclair cut his throat and removed his vocal cords. His failed reanimate alone are 10, each of them killed because of the experimentations, adding 10 charges of second-degree murder and 10 life sentences. Later, D.A. Sinclair organizes an attack using Doug's monster. When his monster is defeated, he is furious and mentions that would be the last time that he would leave anybody's frontal lobe intact while looking at Rick. Organizing an attack with Doug, this would earn him a terrorism charge and another life sentence. He also causes the death of Doug, so that would be 12 life sentences in total. Later, when William and Rick go missing, Mark goes underground to the sewer and looks around for William. He is attacked by Sinclair's cyborgs and taken underwater while being punched. He finds Sinclair's lab while William is tied up. Invincible is punched by many of the monsters while Sinclair argued that he was fixing humanity's weaknesses. Mark takes one of the cyborgs' helmet off and finds out it was Rick, but Sinclair told him not to try to talk to him since he had removed his emotions. Sinclair starts cutting William's arm, which makes Rick recognize William and remove part of his helmet so he could help Invincible, much to Sinclair's horror, who claims that Rick is ruining everything as the other 2 Reanimen are defeated. Sinclair tries escaping, but William chases him and punches him in the face repeatedly. Sinclair overpowers him and flees, claiming that they are ruining humanity, only to run into Mark, who fractures his jaw.
That's it. That's the last time I leave anyone's frontal lobe intact. Classic alpha male.
What did you do with Rick?
Why, the same thing I'm about to do with you.
Oh, William!
Rick?
everywhere, asshole.
This is about progress.
They hand him over to Cecil, who later employs him and his reanimant to further strengthen his military power. As part of a systemic pattern, his experiments would be considered crimes against humanity and would receive a life sentence per victim. DA Sinclair in trial would get 23 life sentences for his illegal activities with experimenting. The list also includes another scientist, none other than Doc Seismic. Very little is known about Doc Seismic's past or how he became a supervillain. He stated that he attended university, where he received his doctorate in seismology. He was also an undergraduate in sociology and women's studies, with a minor in African dance. He is first seen in Season 1, Episode 3, Who You Calling Ugly, when he launches an attack on Mount Rushmore. Doc Seismic uses the earthquake wristbands he created to attack Mount Rushmore and cause eruptions, and causes Mount Rushmore to split. He asks the tourists if they came to pray to that obscene monument, claiming to them that those old presidents were oppressors, racists, slave owners, and that he is a new god worthy of worship. As Abraham Lincoln's face fell, Invincible caught it just in time before it hurt anybody, putting it back. Invincible and Adam Eve fight Doc Seismic, who uses his bracelets to escape from them at a high speed, telling them that they should be on his side and they could tear down the old power structure and build a new order. He mocks Adam Eve's costume, believing it to pander the gender roles. Doc Seismic proves himself to be very strong and causes many people to nearly die if it were not for the two heroes. After Mark barely managed to save a group, Doc Seismic tried to attack, but his bracelets were damaged by Adam Eve. Due to his faulty bracelets, Doc Seismic nearly fell into lava, but was caught by Adam Eve, who was in turn helped by Invincible. Doc Seismic fell anyway, and Invincible jumped after him, not able to grab him in time after a big explosion. The physical damage alone would get him 10 years in prison and a $250,000 in fines. The attempt of destruction would get him a life sentence. The defacing with political intent would get him another 5 years, and the public endangerment would get him another 20 years in prison and $150,000 in fines. He later appears in Season 1, Episode 8, Where I Really Come From, having survived the explosion, now commanding an army of lava monsters. He continues his saga of going after monuments. After gaining command of the magma monsters, he commands them to destroy the Washington Monument. He does cause several cracks upon the monument, but is stopped by Invincible and is sentenced to prison. He would get a similar charge as Mount Rushmore, adding another life sentence, 35 years in prison, and $400,000 in fines. The surrounding damages caused by fighting with the heroes would add another $100,000 in fines. In the aftermath of his two failed attempts in destroying America's sacred historical landmarks, Seismic begins a new plan to take over the country. During his incarceration, Seismic started sensing the Earth's vibrations with his powers and made allies with creatures from the center of the Earth. He used the months of his imprisonment to learn all the vibrations of Earth superheroes. His last attempt was a plot to take over the world, and it included imprisoning the heroes. When he and his allies learned all the vibrations, Seismic escaped from his cell and captured nearly every superhero on Earth, with the exception of Adam Eve and Invincible, who would come to stop him once again. The two heroes were surprised by his new allies, and Seismic was successfully able to capture the both of them. While Seismic was monologuing over his victory, he would get ambushed by Darkwing and Reaniman, who were sent by Cecil as reinforcements. They were able to subdue him and his allies, which got Seismic incarcerated once more. Unlawful imprisonment by force of 28 heroes would get him 20 years for each of them, totaling to 560. Using the Magmaniacs and other monsters would earn him a life sentence, along with attempted murder charges for all of the heroes. All in all, Doc Seismic would earn 31 life sentences, 630 years in prison, and $900,000 in fines. Speaking of Magmaniacs and the other monsters, they would be treated as willing accomplices and be given attempted murder charges. So, 28 counts of life sentences. The public endangerment would get them 20 years each and $150,000 in fines. Next on the list is someone who shares the powers of Magmaniacs, James, or better known as Magmaniac. He served as a bodyguard for Machine Head and was summoned by Isotope to fight for Machine Head. He fights Invincible and uses his magma powers to melt Titan's rock skin. When Invincible got angry, he ripped him apart with just one punch. When the other heroes arrive, Magmaniac continues to fight Monster Girl, trying to burn her monster form while being attacked back by Rexplode. He protects Machine Head from Black Samson's attacks. He seems to not be affected by Rexplode's Explosion's attacks. He continues to fight the Guardians of the Globe, but explodes when Shrinking Ray increases in size from inside him. His attempts to kill Titan, Invincible, Monster Girl, Black Samson, Rexplode, and Shrinking Ray would each get him a life sentence. He is also seen robbing a bank thrice in the show, all 3 times along with Tether Tyrant, robbing a bank. The first time, Invincible considers stopping the two, but just leaves it to the hands of the Global Defense Agency. The second time, Tether, Tyrant, and Magmaniac tried robbing another bank, but were forced to leave empty-handed when Bulletproof arrived. The pair hid in a trash can and succeeded in escaping Bulletproof. Afterwards, they tried retiring from their supervillain posts. The supervillains attempt to earn an honest living by working at a fast food restaurant. With orders piling in and after getting shouted at by an impatient manager, Magmaniac attempts to use his powers to speed up the cooking process, only to end up burning the patties. As Magmaniac gets reprimanded for burning the patties, Tether Tyrant stands up for his boyfriend, which ends up getting both of them fired. But with the increased rent and their dire financial situations, having no other choice, Tether Tyrant and Magmaniac rob a bank as a last resort to get some money to pay off their debts. It ended with them confronted by Invincible and Kid Omni-Man, who defeated both of them and sent them to prison. For each bank robbery attempt, Magmaniac and Tether Tyrant would each get 25 years. This would mean that both of them would get 6 life sentences and 50 years in prison. Other villains who showed up to protect Machine Head are Furnace and Kursk. Unlike the other villains, Furnace is not seen fighting Invincible and Titan. However, when the Guardians of the Globe arrive, he attacks Robot. Afterwards, he fights Duplicate, but explodes from Rexplode's explosive letters attached by Duplicate to his armor, letting out magma. He collapses to the ground trying not to drop it. Kursk mostly fights Invincible and attacks him at once, along with Magmaniac. When Invincible is caught by Tether Tyrant, Kursk continues to electrocute Mark, but Mark releases himself and throws Tyrant into him, both being crushed in the floor. When the Guardians of the Globe arrive to help Mark, Kursk fights Duplicate but gets dominated. He then regroups and goes to fight Monster Girl, though she gets angry after seeing what happened to Black Samson and crushes Kursk into a wall, leaving him unconscious. He later fights Duplicate, mostly destroying all her clones, but is stopped and defeated by Robot. Furnace is later sent along with Kursk by Titan under threat from Mr. Liu to break Multi-Paul out of prison. The two are seen battling security guards before Invincible and Kid Omni-Man show up. The latter of the two then rushes into the fight despite the former telling him not to. Invincible manages to defeat both Furnace and Kursk, sending him flying before smashing against a wall, breaking open his armor, leaving his molten body to fall onto Kursk, which burns him. Furnace is then arrested alongside Kursk by the security guards. They each get 6 life sentences for attempting murders against the heroes. They are also seen in the Season 3, Episode 5, when Titan sent them to break Multi-Paul out and battle officers, for which they would each be given another life sentence and about $1 million in fines for the damages caused. The last of these villains was the scariest of them all, Battle Beast. Little is known about Battle Beast's life prior to arriving on Earth, except that his real name is Thok, and he is a space-traveling fighter wanting to fight worthy opponents. Battle Beast was hired by Machine Head to help defend him from Invincible and the Guardians of the Globe, being promised that he would be given worthy adversaries to fight. In the ensuing battle, Battle Beast easily overwhelmed Invincible, Black Samson, and Monster Girl. Disappointed by the strength of his adversaries and not being promised what he wanted, he promptly left and spared them, claiming that there was no honor in killing insects. He stacks up quite well, as after the 6 life sentences for the heroes, he is also seen ambushing 2 guards in another scene. He teams up with Alan aboard the Viltrumite ship and stages a prison break, which ends in multiple casualties. For this, he would add another life sentence. He goes on to kill one of Omni-Man's torturers, gaining a count of first-degree murder and a life sentence to go with it. In all, he would get 10 life sentences. Of the people who fought for Machine Head, Titan would also receive multiple charges. In his debut scene, he assists in helping some agents get away, earning him 25 years in prison. He goes on to kill 10 gangsters, for whom he would receive a life sentence for each. He also intimates several others, which would come under gang-related intimidation, earning him another 25 years more. He would also get 1 count of arson in the following scene, for which he would get another life sentence. He also steals a chip from Machine Head, which would add another 10 years. After overthrowing Machine Head, he would take his place, becoming a crime boss. For this conspiracy, he would get a death sentence. He would also get multiple counts of drug and weapons trafficking, extortions, and attempted murder for his activities as a gang leader. Give or take, these can be estimated to be 10 life sentences for the murder-related charges, 40 years for weapons trafficking, 10 life sentences for drug trafficking, and 25 years for extortions. Titan on trial would receive 1 death sentence, 31 life sentences, 125 years in prison, and an estimated $300 million in property damage fines. The main victims of Titan, the gangsters that Titan killed, would share a drug trafficking sentence, with each of them getting a life in prison. Titan's former boss, Machine Head, and Mr. Liu would share a similar sentence as him, though the counts would be much higher as they were in business for much longer than Titan. Machine Head is a cyborg of unknown origin that controls a protection racket in the city. He is also involved in drug traffic, disguised as garbage disposal, and building insurance fraud, ordering the destruction of buildings but staged to look like accidents so he could collect the insurance money. Machine Head would get 6 counts of attempted murder for trying to kill Titan, Invincible, Invincible, Monster Girl, Black Samson, Rexplode, and Shrinking Ray. He would also get a death sentence for his conspiracy with Titan and a life sentence for attempted murder of Mr. Liu and his bodyguard. With each count of extortion and intimidation having 25 years in prison, it wouldn't be far-fetched to estimate even a 1,000 year in prison for that alone. Not to mention, all the drug trafficking can easily add up to 1,000 life sentences, and weapons would add another 1,000 years in prison. He wasn't one to shy away from ordering murder to be executed, which can be roughly estimated to be 250 life sentences for a low-end total. He would get 20 years and 100,000 for insurance fraud. In estimation, he could get a death sentence, 1,259 life sentences, 2,020 years in prison, and 100,000 in fines. That is, without all the property damages, which are probably in the billions. Mr. Liu would only be exempted from a few of the charges given to Machine Head, but he also orchestrated a prison break for Multipol that ended in multiple deaths and would add another life sentence to his charges. He would share the drug and weapon trafficking charges, the murder-related charges, and extortion charges. Mr. Liu would be charged with 1,251 life sentences, 2,000 years in prison, and billions in fines. Another major character in this organized crime would be Isotope. He would share all the charges given to both Titan and Machine Head as an accomplice for everything they did. This would end in this list being an impressive 2 death sentences, 1,290 life sentences, and 2,125 years in prison. On a related note, the brother of Duplicate, called Multipol, also makes the list. He used to work for Mr. Liu, who calls him his greatest assassin. For such a comment, it can at least be estimated that he would have been involved in 25 deaths, which would give him 25 life sentences. He once escaped prison to go after Rex, and assuming there were no casualties, it would add another 5 years to his sentence. He then attempts to kill Rex, giving him a count of attempted murder of the first degree and another life sentence. In fighting Rex, he assisted in the theft of the Declaration of Independence, and so would be given 20 years in prison, along with a $500,000 in fines. He then attempted another prison break, where he killed 9 officers and added another life sentence. Multipol on trial would receive 27 life sentences, 25 years in prison, and $500,000 in fines. There is one other gang in the show, the Lizard League. They were often associated with acts of terrorism, the first of which was trying to turn civilians into snakes using a specialized gun called the Snakeinator. Even though the League was defeated, the Guardians failed to contain the civilian casualties. The most notable example of that was Rexplode and Monster Girl failing to prevent a bus full of children from crashing, while Duplicate didn't consider shielding civilians from King Lizard's Snakeinator gun. That lapse of judgment led to several people being turned into snakes. The bus would go for $100,000. Along with this, King Lizard would be given a death sentence. When King Lizard came back after being incarcerated, he killed the Supreme Lizard, adding another life sentence. He would then go on to lead the League to infiltrate a nuclear missile silo. After killing the Supreme Lizard, King Lizard begins a new plan to take over a missile silo in Wyoming. Iguana was sent to bring forth the Lizard League and the King. She slayed 2 grunts before summoning them. However, one of them in their dying breath pressed the alarm, which was King Lizard's plan. The King announces to enjoy their stay, as now they have the dead man's switch, as the government will have no choice to accept their demands, or else the United States will be nuked. The remaining Guardians, Rexplode, Duplicate, and Shrinking Ray, attack. Rex and Iguana mainly fight, while Salamander, Komodo Dragon fight Duplicate and Shrinking Ray until it escalates to the point where majority of the Guardians are dead, leaving only Rexplode, who gets walloped by the Lizard League but kills them. Left severely beaten, tired, and now with only one hand, he begins spiraling when the Lizard King, who watched his whole squad die, steps out of nowhere holding a gun to his head, giving Rex a speech. But Rex wants him to pull the trigger and get it over with. King Lizard shoots Rex in the skull, afterwards calls an unknown caller, telling them of his demands. His call gets interrupted when Rexplode moves and notices King Lizard speak, however, he is unable to hear him. He starts lunging at King Lizard and rams his dismembered fist into the Lizard's face, nearly rendering him dead, as his hand stops moving and continues getting stomped by Rex. However, is stopped by the GDA agents.
Oh God, no! Yum.
This isn't happening.
So brave.
Just do it, you prick.
Agree to my demands, and I will consider not destroying half of the nation. Look at this brave little soldier. Perhaps you're too stupid to realize.
Shut up! Leave in the fucking head!
He would be charged with 3 counts of attempted murder, along with a death sentence for the infiltration. King Lizard would get 2 death sentences, 4 life sentences, and $100,000 in fines. In the short time the Supreme Lizard took charge, under his command, the Lizard League began to hit a bio-research lab, then they were interrupted by Shapesmith posing as the Guardians of the Globe before the actual Guardians showed up to deal with them. Iguana picks him up and fights against them, but eventually loses. He would be given a life sentence for this. Other members of the League would get separate charges for their part in the activities. Iguana would get a death sentence for the Terrorism Act with the Snakeinator, along with a life sentence for trying to take over the bio-research lab. In the missile silo, she killed 2 officers, giving her 2 counts of first-degree murder, and attempted to kill the 3 heroes, giving her 3 more counts of first-degree attempted murder. She would also be given a death sentence for the act of terrorism. In total, she would have gotten 2 death sentences and 5 life sentences for her part in the gang's activities. Salamander would get a similar sentence as Iguana, just without the killing of 2 officers. He would get 2 death sentences and 3 life sentences. Komodo Dragon is the only one to have been shown to pass prior to the Lizard League. Some 3 years before Nolan's arrival on Earth, Komodo Dragon was wreaking havoc inside the Global Defense Agency base when he ran into a young Cecil and Radcliffe, the GDA's chief at the time. He kills 3 guards in the fight. For this, he would receive a death sentence for his act of terrorism and 3 life sentences for the guards. He would then share Salamander's sentence of 2 death sentences and 3 life sentences. The next on the list are the ones who put down Komodo Dragon when he broke into the GDA all those years ago: Force Fist and Knuckle Buster. Before they turned good, they were in possession of a toxic substance that could melt the skin off anyone who comes in contact with it. Cecil gets severely injured and 17 others died as a result of the poisonous fumes. This would get them each a death sentence for the act of terrorism and 17 life sentences for the civilian deaths. Of the villains that turned good, we have Nightboy, Darkwing's sidekick. While little is known of the second Darkwing, he actually had another name called Nightboy and was also the original Darkwing's assistant, who taught him hand-to-hand combat and even a technique that Darkwing was able to access, but not entirely. Following the original Darkwing's demise, he took over the protection of Midnight City. Unlike his predecessor, he didn't have any moral line as he was more than willing to kill anyone he would perceive as a criminal. Nightboy was able to fully access the Shadowverse and discover various creatures living inside the Dark Realm and steered away from them. For many periods of months of keeping Midnight City safe, Nightboy would undergo mental struggles even to the point where he'd hear voices, no doubt from his endless usage of the Shadowverse when defeating criminals. He would go on to violently kill various innocents and chase down a pink-haired punk man. When beating said punk to death, Invincible flew in, separating him from the delinquent. Darkwing 2 informed him how he was the original Darkwing's assistant before Invincible's father killed him. For this, he would be charged with at least 10 counts of first-degree murder and a count of attempted murder for the pink-haired punk man. Next, we have a good man who became so overwhelmed with grief and turned into a villain, Powerplex. The early history of Scott Duvall remains unknown, except that he was raised by his sister, who was his only family growing up after their parents died. At some point, he married a woman named Becky and later had a child named Jack. Scott eventually got a job as a scientist at the Global Defense Agency. He also possessed the superpower of absorbing physical attacks and turning them into energy, though this was a low-level power and he could not absorb much. Scott would be in Chicago at the park with his sister and niece in the horrific battle between Omni-Man and Invincible. While they went back to their apartment, Scott stayed behind to get a coffee, and as he was exiting the cafe, Invincible and Omni-Man crashed through the city in their battle. Scott was knocked out, and when he awoke, he witnessed Chicago in ruins with corpses all over the ground. He then saw the building his sister and niece were in collapsing as Invincible was trying to prevent this. Unfortunately, Invincible failed and Jessica as well as Gretchen were killed along with so many others during the battle. Scott witnessed Invincible holding the severed arm of his sister along with the corpse of his niece and broke down in tears.
I'm gonna grab a coffee before I come up. Want anything?
Nah, I'm good.
Jessica! No!
He has since blamed their deaths not only on Omni-Man, but also on his son Invincible, and refused to believe the latter was attempting to save them. Sometime after this, Scott met up with District Attorney Barnett in hopes of getting an investigation and trial started against Invincible. Despite Scott's pleas, however, Barnett pointed out how Invincible was protecting the planet from Omni-Man and solemnly stated that there was nothing she could do. This only served to increase Scott's frustration and anger towards Invincible. At the GDA lab, Scott was watching security footage of Invincible's battle with Omni-Man. This was when he looked over undercover at 2 other scientists testing out experimental power storage disk technology, which he had been secretly stealing. He grew nervous when Donald entered, having found out some of them were missing but still did not know it was Scott. After exclaiming his hatred of Invincible toward 2 other GDA employees at the cafeteria, Scott proceeded to put his plan into action. Back at the house, Scott had donned his supersuit and was practicing his rage monologue toward Invincible. Becky supported Scott and proceeded to place the stolen discs into his body, amplifying his energy absorption abilities. As Powerplex, he went on a rampage in the city, demanding that Invincible show up and saying his name many times. However, Invincible did not, and instead, Shapesmith appeared, who tried to appease Powerplex by changing his form into Invincible, though this only angered Powerplex even more. A fight ensued, which ended in Shapesmith's defeat and damage to the city. Powerplex tried to defend his actions, but then fled upon seeing the civilians' scared expressions and when backup was called.
This isn't about me! This is about the thousands of people, countless other lives!
Who are you? I'm Shapesmith, beloved member of the Guardians of the Globe.
I want Invincible!
Well, it's a little hurtful. Ta-da! Is this better?
Give me the real Invincible!
Since you're getting a little upset and there's lightning.
I warned him! I said I didn't want to fight!
Returning to his home, Scott berated himself for his failure to get Invincible to face him and realized that now that he had revealed himself on the news, it was only a matter of time until the GDA would discover that he was the one that stole their tech and would track him. Becky reassured Scott and reminded him of the memorial event that would be happening in Chicago in honor of all those that were killed during the battle. Remotivated, Scott unleashed an energy surge which frightened Jack, though Becky managed to calm him down. The two realized that Invincible would have to attend the memorial event and Scott proceeded to go there. At the memorial event, Invincible did indeed attend, but he came as Mark Grayson and not in his superhero identity. When Powerplex arrived and crashed the event, he listed the names of some of the many people that were killed during the Battle of Chicago, including Jessica and Gretchen, and demanded Invincible show himself. The Graysons fled to cover, and while Mark initially wished to deal with this, Eve instead went with Debbie supporting this and telling Mark not to engage. Adam Eve dueled with Powerplex and quickly realized that physical attacks only made him stronger. She tried to box him in with her energy constructs, but he quickly broke through them. Adam Eve was eventually able to restrain Powerplex before the Guardians of the Globe arrived, and she let him deal with him. The Guardians managed to defeat Powerplex and he was loaded onto a prison transport. During transport, however, a bump in the road made Powerplex learn that he could gain energy by slamming himself into the walls of the vehicle. 2 GDA soldiers tried to stop him, but Powerplex was able to cause the transport to crash and escape his confinement. This escape from custody would earn him his first proper crime and with it a life sentence. In a last-ditch effort to draw out Invincible, they faked a kidnapping where Powerplex pretended to hold a woman and her baby hostage, actually Becky and Jack, in the very apartment building where Jessica and Gretchen died. Invincible finally did come and confronted Powerplex. The two fought in Powerplex attempts to kill Invincible, killing his wife and child in the process. For this, he would earn 1 charge of first-degree attempted murder and 2 second-degree murders, giving him a total of 4 life sentences. There's another villain we all forgot about, Omnipotus. He makes a brief cameo in 2 episodes. First in Season 2, Episode 5, this must come as a shock. While Invincible was in Thraxa, Omnipotus somehow crossed over to Earth's reality. He was then confronted by the Guardians of the Globe and other superheroes. He proclaimed his unlimited power before violently attacking, sending several heroes flying and injuring them. For this, he will receive 7 life sentences for attempted murder. Then in Season 2, Episode 8, I Thought You Were Stronger, Omnipotus confronts Invincible after the hero is sent to his reality by Angstrom Levy. Omnipotus questions Invincible's presence before landing multiple powerful punches on him. Before the fight can escalate, Angstrom teleports Invincible away. For this, he would add another life sentence for attempted murder to his charges. In the end, Omnipotus would face 8 life sentences for all the lives that he endangered. Next up, we have the hero's punching bag, Kilcannon. He becomes the first to witness both Eve's and Invincible's powers in full display. In the first scene, Kilcannon blasted through 2 huge skyscrapers and then shot at police officers who arrived on the scene. He missed and the shot went on to destroy 3 police cars. For this, he would get an aggravated assault on police personal charge, for which he would get 20 years with an addition of 25 years for the use of a deadly weapon. Not counting the damage caused by Invincible throwing him around, those skyscrapers alone would be 500 million in fines and the cars would be another 60,000. In his second scene, he doesn't succeed in even getting 1 shot. So he would get a sentence of attempted aggravated assault for 10 years. In his final scene, he broke into the hero's HQ and attempted to steal a powerful battery for his arm cannon. For this, he would get a life sentence as he possessed a deadly weapon and broke into an occupied building. He then attempted to take property by force, adding another 30 years to his sentence. He goes on to fight Adam Eve and comes close to shooting her in the face, which would add another life sentence for the attempted murder. Their fight also almost kills 2 people, for which he would serve 3 years for reckless endangerment. In the end, he would stand with 2 life sentences, 88 years in prison, and $500,060,000 in fines. Speaking of punching bags, let's talk about Invincible's first kill, Angstrom Levy. First up on his list is when he helped the Mauler Twins escape prison by opening a portal in their cells. So for aiding and abetting escape from lawful custody, he has earned 20 years. Then comes the scene where he coerced the Mauler Twins into helping him by threatening to leave them in the wastelands to die. This would add another 5 years to his sentence. Then in the final episode of season 2, I Thought You Were Stronger, he takes Oliver and Debbie hostage, earning 15 years each for hostage taking. When Invincible was trying to make him see reason, saying that it was his machine that blew up and Invincible had nothing to do with making him a freak, he slaps Debbie across the room. For this, the court would order 2 assault and battery charges and give him another year in prison. Ironically, while trying to convince Debbie that he was not the villain and that it was Invincible who made him do this, he breaks Debbie's arm. This would earn him another 20 years in prison on a mutilation charge. While he was busy smashing Invincible through dimensions, he was also racking up a heavy first-degree attempted murder charge with a life sentence tag attached to it. But even after all these charges, Angstrom didn't give up. In the next season, he ended up spying on the Grayson household, which would give him a stalking charge with 4 years in prison. Now, he is the one who unleashes all of the Invincibles on the world, planning and causing the Invincible War, so he would be charged for all their crimes as well. From the news report, an estimated 300,000 people died in that war, giving Levy another 300,000 life sentences, plus a death sentence. Among the cities that have been leveled, Los Angeles has an estimated worth of 1.2 trillion. Chicago is another 0.8 trillion. New York is 1.5 trillion, Paris is 1 trillion, Moscow is 1.2 trillion, London is 1.3 trillion, Tokyo is 1.8 trillion, New Delhi at 0.9 trillion, Seoul at 1 trillion, and finally, Sydney at 0.7 trillion. The cost of economic recovery alone would be an estimated 7.5 trillion from all the economic disruptions. The cost of emergency aid efforts in rescue and recovery would be another 3.5 trillion. Oh, and the cost to rebuild the military of several of the top cities of the world would be an estimated $3 trillion. All in all, the amount would be racked up to 25 trillion under mass property destruction charges. Finally, a worthy competitor for Omni-Man, but he would also get another death sentence for such a charge. He would then go on to fight Invincible soon after sending all the evil Invincibles to the wasteland. It would end with him getting yet another year in prison for assault and battery. But through all of this, in the end, Angstrom would get off easy. He becomes an exceptional case. Angstrom Levy suffered a brain injury, and prior to the accident, he didn't want to kill anyone. So the court would waive off his 2 death sentences, 300,000 and 1 life sentences, 86 years in prison, and $25 trillion in fines. In exchange, though, he would spend the rest of his life in an insane asylum, as they would be waived based on criminal insanity. He's definitely the one who's laughing now. But you know who would pay all of the charges? The technicians. The scientists that helped Levy rebuild his body on the condition that he takes over Earth. Following a battle with Invincible that resulted in grave injuries, Angstrom Levy created a portal to the technicians' dimensions purely for them to mend his wounds. They managed to fully heal him utilizing advanced cybernetics in return for his commitment to uphold his promises to them. The technicians observed Angstrom Levy throughout the Invincible War. Upon witnessing his betrayal of Team Evil Invincible and understanding he would never fulfill his commitments to them, they opted to deceive him and present an ultimatum: either become their servant or allow his body to be used for their experiments. Realizing he had no alternative, Angstrom consented, and following the healing of his injuries, they expressed their wishes for a new world to flee the tormenting planet in which they currently resided. A reasonable wish, Angstrom acknowledged, but much to his bewilderment, they also disclosed that their ambitions extended beyond merely new beginnings. They would only be exempted from the 25 years that Levy earned while trying to get the Mauler Twins on his side. They would be slapped with the 2 death sentences, 300,000 and 1 life sentences, 61 years in prison, and $25 trillion in fines by the court for each of them. That's a whole lot for people who only spent a minute on the screen. But Angstrom wasn't the only one who tried to take over the Earth, and they tried to do so without even having a proper brain. It is none other than the Sequids. Sequids make their debut scene in Season 1, Episode 4, Neil Armstrong, Eat Your Heart Out. The Martian King explains that the invasive species had taken over planets before crash landing on Mars. this, we have already established that one planet could be estimated to be about 5 quadrillion. Without even having a count for the populations they killed everywhere, and having an estimate of 10 planets, it can be said that they would already take 10 death sentences and about 50 quadrillion in fines. Angstrom is not a worthy competitor after all. On screen, their first victims are right after the crash, where 24 aliens are seen lying dead as a result of the Sequids taking over their bodies. During their time on Mars, the Sequids were left scattered and weak due to being unable to take control of the Martians thanks to their shape-shifting abilities. As the Sequids could not penetrate the skin of the Martian people, they were used as servants to the Martians as they posed no threat. However, this would change when a team of astronauts from the neighboring planet, Earth, were sent on the first mission to Mars with Invincible having been tasked by the Global Defense Agency to watch over them. When the team of astronauts landed on Mars, they were soon kidnapped by the Martians and brought to the Emperor of Mars. They were scheduled for immediate execution due to the Emperor fearing the Sequids taking advantage of them to rise and invade Mars. Invincible is able to help the astronauts escape, but it is later revealed that a Martian had shapeshifted and taken the place of one of the astronauts, Russ Livingston.
Go, 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 go! Move, move, move!
This can be defined as the Sequids taking the astronaut hostage, adding another 15 years in prison for hostage taking. The astronaut who had been replaced is then claimed by the Sequids, which allowed them to unify and began their invasion of Mars. In that scene, they take over 21 armed Martian men, adding another 21 life sentences for first-degree murder. They are then said to have taken over Mars as well, taking another death sentence and another 5 quadrillion. Once their invasion was complete, they jumped onto a spaceship and began their journey towards the nearest planet that had life. This would be tried as war crimes, adding another death sentence. When members of the Guardians of the Globe are dispatched to stop the invasion, the Sequids are alerted to their presence by the death of one when Bulletproof spots it and kills it without a second thought. While the Guardians managed to hold him off temporarily, the team was constantly overwhelmed by the massive numbers, knocking Adam Eve unconscious and forcing Shapesmith to morph into a protective barrier around them. They would be adding assault and battery charges for each one of the heroes present, totaling to 6 more years in prison. Back in the fight, this stalling allowed Robot to create a device that cleansed Livingston from the Sequids' control. However, the Sequids managed to gain control of both Adam Eve and Robot, but before they could fully recover, the Guardians restrained the two and Invincible managed to use the device once more to remove the Sequids. But even for this brief scene, they would add 30 more years for hostage taking. Finally, the Guardians made it off the Martian ship, and with no hosts, the Sequids were no longer a threat. Or so they thought. Unbeknownst to anyone, however, one Sequid was hidden inside Russ Livingston's stomach and was brought back with him to Earth. Eventually, Russ vomited from the stay his residence was left in by Shapesmith during his absence, allowing the lone Sequid to emerge from inside of his body and attack him, enslaving him once more. This means that even as the screen time for the Sequids closed for season 3, they had another 15 years in prison for hostage taking the same guy for the second time. In total, they would serve 12 death sentences, 45 life sentences, 60 years in prison, and a small fine of 55 quadrillion. The next character on the list is someone who has stacked up quite the charges list for someone who claims to be the guy who saves the world, Cecil Stedman. Originally a field agent working for the GDA, Cecil was horrifically scarred while trying to stop Force Fist and Knucklebuster's terrorist attack. Although the GDA was able to restore his skin completely, Cecil chose to keep the scar on the right side of his face, which was the only salvageable part as a reminder of his failure. Later, during the Lizard League's attack on the Pentagon, Cecil and the director Radcliffe were saved from Komodo Dragon by none other than Force Fist and Knucklebuster, now revealed to be working for the GDA. Here comes the first crime. Although Radcliffe argues that their talents were too valuable to waste, Cecil is disgusted by this and murders the pair in cold blood.
We're almost to the safe room.
Not leaving the party early, are we?
It's okay. They work for us now. I fixed them. Then let me express my gratitude.
He would have been given 2 life sentences for this act. In the show, despite being incarcerated with supervillains, Cecil brings order to the facility and drastically reduces the mortality rate. For this, he is released and given the position of director of the GDA. His actions as director often towed the line between good and evil. A prime example of this is how routinely he spies on the heroes who work for them. A single stalking charge, as given to Angstrom, is 4 years in prison. When Amber and Mark have a study date in season 1 episode 3, Who You Calling Ugly, Mark's phone rings and he hangs up, but he is called once again, so he turns his phone off. He is surprised when he is called yet again, so he picks up and Cecil pops out from his phone, relieved that Amber had left. Mark asks Cecil if he had been spying on him, but Cecil tells him that if he wants to be a hero, privacy is not an option. Mark points out that he did not even work for him, but Cecil counters by telling him he never would if he never showed respect or decided if he wanted to be a hero.
Okay. I figured we should start with global issues and then move. This should do it. On the, Whoa!
Christ almighty, I didn't think she would ever leave.
Are you spying on me?
Oh, you want to be a superhero, right? Well, then the whole concept of personal privacy or me time, that's out the window.
I don't even work for you.
And you never will. Not unless you show a little respect and decide if you want to be a superhero or not.
During his time as director and the undisclosed number of heroes who worked under him, even a small number of 50 superheroes would earn him 200 years in prison. Besides this, his heroes were also routinely minors, with him showing no regard for their private lives. He puts them in hazardous situations, and his sole justification is that they have powers. By his own logic, a child prodigy should be allowed to do nothing but find the cure for cancer just because they have a higher IQ. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, children under 18 cannot work in jobs deemed hazardous. For each child illegally employed, fines go up to $137,602 if serious injury or death occurs, with 3 years in prison. Even with an estimate of 10 heroes, including Rex, Eve, Invincible, Rudy, Ray, and Kate, Paul, and 3 others for the heroes undisclosed, there would be a fine of about $1,376,020 and 30 years in prison. This, of course, does not take into account the medical bills and compensation he would have to pay for repeated violations. With how often these heroes get bashed on the field, it would be fair to have an estimate of about $1 billion. He also has experimented on Mark's blood without his consent, which would become a battery charge with a year in prison and $500,000 in fines. The next victim on Cecil's target is Damien Darkblood. Cecil told him that when they had searched his office, they had found dried blood. Darkblood tells him that it was painted since he did not try to kill Nolan or the Guardians. Cecil tells him that he's aware, but had to excise him anyway since Darkblood had not dropped the case when he told him to. Darkblood told him it was impossible to excise him since he had destroyed the book centuries ago, but Cecil told him that by using advanced technology, they had the book once more. Donald starts the ritual, and Cecil told him that he needed to know why Nolan had killed the Guardians and how to stop him. Darkblood is grabbed by chains and taken back to hell. This is classified as illegal imprisonment. For this, he would be given 20 years in prison and a fine of $100,000. He is also famous for working with criminals, where he forms alliances to further his own armies. For each alliance, he would serve 20 years in prison, and 3 such cases are known: Darkwing 2, D.A. Sinclair, and Omni-Man, who he willingly turns a blind eye to. With the same reanimin that came out of his alliance with Sinclair, Cecil commits his next crime. After defeating Doc Seismic, Darkwing 2 informs Cecil that Invincible is coming, angry about the alliance between them. Mark enters angrily, asking Cecil if he works with D.A. Sinclair, stating that he should be in prison. Cecil states that Sinclair can't fix his mistakes if he's in prison, and neither can Darkwing. He continues by saying that Sinclair is a genius and Darkwing fought crime in Midnight City. He says that talents like that are not wasted, but are reformed, repaired, and left to fix their mistakes. Mark doesn't understand, however, stating that they killed people and that Rick is still hurting after what Sinclair did to him. Cecil informs that the new reanimin are donated bodies and that Darkwing will not kill anymore, having both undergone massive psychological reprogramming. They now save lives and that they are repaying the debt they owe to them. These two go back and forth, while Cecil trying to justify his actions by calling Mark a killer too. He eventually leads Mark into the White Room and says that the room is to protect him. When Mark asks what he needed protection from, Cecil replies bitterly, "From you, Mark, from you." The lights turn off and suddenly 5 reanimin appear around him. Other reanimins appear as Mark asks if he uses them to keep Darkwing or Sinclair in line, and Cecil says that they don't have his abilities. Mark replies that he only uses his abilities to help people. Cecil then states that Mark sees things his own way, leaving no room for others' points of view, and threatens anyone who disagrees with him. Mark is grabbed by the arm by a reanimin, which makes him even more angry. Mark asks him if he thinks he can shut him up. Cecil tries to talk, but at that moment, Mark blows the jaw off the reanimin that was holding him back. The other reanimins attack him, but he defeats them all while Cecil tries to reason with him. When he has them with everyone defeated, he asks Cecil if it was his best. Suddenly, the room turns red and hundreds of reanimin appear around them. Cecil asks Mark one last time to stop, but Mark is unyielding. Cecil says that he doesn't want to hurt him, and Mark threateningly states that he won't be the one to get hurt. Cecil says that Mark had said he wasn't threatening, and Mark simply states that people change. Cecil warns Mark not to do it, but Mark launches launches into the attack, at which point Cecil presses a button and Mark is stunned by a sound. Now, until this point, this can be ruled as self-defense, but what happens next would lead him in getting a torture charge. Cecil reveals that the sound is that of a high-frequency sound, which is high enough to incapacitate him for a temporary time. He includes that it comes from his earpiece. Mark then tears it off and throws it away, but Cecil reveals that they implanted an earpiece deep into his head when he was in the hospital. Cecil disables the sound and asks Mark to be reasonable and go home.
Protection from what? Protection from me?
It's my job to defend the planet from threats. Don't make me put you in that category, Mark.
You think you can shut me up? Is that all you got?
Why did you have to ask that, kid? Remember that giant lobster you tangled with in Atlantis? I had the lab boys recreate the sound it made. So be reasonable, Mark.
But Mark states that time to be reasonable has finished, so he takes off out of the Pentagon. Before he can make it out, he is stunned by the sound again and falls down, landing near the Pentagon. Cecil informs him that the sound throws off his orientation, preventing him from flying or walking. Mark states in shock that they put a weapon inside him, and he would be right. No amount of justification for this premeditated torture device would make it excusable. He would get a life sentence for his stunt with a sound and attacking Mark with Reaniman once he was incapacitated. Cecil then teleports to the Guardians of the Globe base where Mark crashed. He tells the Guardians to move away and that it's none of their business while he displays how he's torturing Mark. The Guardians eventually get on Mark's side. Rex then reacts and hits one of the Reanimen while the rest of the Guardians follow his example and they attack. Rex hits Cecil's arm to destroy the button. He succeeds but does not stop the frequency. While Rudy tries to deactivate it, the Reanimen all head towards Mark and start beating him. Monster Girl tries to intervene but is pushed aside. The beating continues until Robot blocks the frequency, at which point Mark goes into a state of fury and massacres all the Reanimen under the astonished gaze of the Guardians. Now, this would be a severe assault charge, which would get him a life sentence. In the end, Mark grabs him by the throat and throws him against one of the ruins. He tells Cecil that he will not work ever again for him and warns him that if he ever comes near his family again, he will kill him. Then lets him go and asks Rudy to remove the device from his head, which Rudy does. Cecil on trial would earn him 3 life sentences, 310 years in prison, and 1,976,020 in fines. Up next, we cannot talk about Cecil without talking about his mentor, Director Radcliffe. His sentence would start off with his alliances with Force Fist and Knucklebuster, giving him 40 years in prison. Considering that he is Cecil's role model, he would share the stalking charges, the child labor charges, and other such alliances with criminals. All in all, he would take 290 years in prison and a 1,376,020 in fines. As the final few to this list, we have the Viltrumites. First up, we have Anissa. Since she has survived the Great Purge, it means that she killed other Viltrumites, which could give her a mass murder charge and a death sentence. In the fall of 2023, under orders from General Craig, Anissa arrives on Earth to check on the progress of Invincible's mission, to convince its population to join the Viltrum Empire without resistance. She interrupts Mark's day with Amber Bennett, in which she threatened to snap Amber's neck if he doesn't speak with her privately, to which he agrees if only she left peacefully and waited for him up in the sky. Anissa agrees, but warns him to be quick, otherwise she will return to massacre everyone in the university's restaurant, starting with Amber. This would count as a death threat with clear intent, giving her 20 years in prison. A few minutes later, meeting up in the sky, Anissa tries to convince Mark on how much the Empire can support and repair the very fragile planet he dearly loves. Their conversation is cut short when Mark receives a call from GDA Director Cecil Stedman about a giant kaiju attacking a cruise ship in the South Pacific. In an attempt to convince Mark of her sincerity and to witness how strong Nolan's son is, Anissa follows Mark to the ship and watches him attempting to fight the giant sea monster before swooping in and effortlessly killing it herself, saving all the cruise ship civilians. Mark then carries the ship to a remote island. Anissa continues to attempt to recruit Mark by telling him that everybody on board the cruise ship would have died if she hadn't been present, as it was an example of this type of security the Empire will provide once they take over Earth, but Mark stands firm in his refusal. Having lost all patience, Anissa attacks Mark, trying to beat him into submission, but fails to get him to comply. Anissa makes it clear to Mark that killing him is not her task.
Mark Grayson, come with me now, or this woman dies.
What do you want?
To talk somewhere we can speak alone.
Okay, I'll meet you above us in the sky.
Otherwise, I will return here and everyone dies, beginning with her.
What do you want?
Human civilization, less than an 18% chance of surviving the next 2 centuries. We have the technology to repair their climate, feed their hungry.
There's a cruise ship about to get eaten a few thousand miles southwest from you.
I will accompany you. All these humans would have died if I was not here. Be your father's son.
No, I'm not one of you.
Killing you is not my task, but soon, another will come.
This would count as an aggravated assault charge, earning her another 25 years in prison. Before she leaves, she threatens the planet again, adding another 20 years to her sentence. Anissa then reports back to General Craig's ship, where she informs him about Mark's refusal to align with the Viltrumites, declaring him to be poisoned like his father. While being chastised for her failure, the two suddenly spot the Unopan coalition soldier, Alan, flying near the ship. He sends her to kill him once and for all as a form of redemption. A fight ensues. Much to her bewilderment, Alan has become strong enough to make her bleed. This would, of course, add a life sentence for her attempted first-degree murder. And so she decides to capture and send him to prison in order to discover the source of his strength. This would be illegal imprisonment, earning her another 20 years in prison. All in all, Anissa would receive a death sentence, a life sentence, and 85 years in prison. Next on the list, we have Vidor. Like Anissa, he would share a mass murder charge with a death sentence. In 2023, upon learning from their mole inside the coalition of planets that Nolan had abandoned his post on Earth inside a hybrid heir, Vidor, along with Thula and Lucan, traveled to Telesria, where they tracked down the Unopan coalition soldier Alan to a restaurant spaceship orbiting the planet. The three attempted to extract more information about Nolan from him, but instead Alan vexingly refused, resulting in his nigh-fatal beatdown and hospitalization. The three Viltrumites left to continue their search for the deserter. For this, he would receive a life sentence for the first-degree attempted murder. He, along with Lucan and Thula, finally learned of Nolan's whereabouts and traveled to Thraxa, decimating the planet. Nolan went back to check on his family and seemingly killed Lucan, resulting in a massacre in the city led by him and Thula. Though they did not fully erase the species, they killed off at least 80%, so he would get a death sentence and around 500 trillion in fines as compensation for the damages. They find Nolan and Mark, and Vidor remarks on the status of Lucan, whom Nolan acknowledges as both weak and dead. Vidor continues by declaring the Thraxans to be weak and deserving of death as well, leading Nolan to say that he will kill Vidor for what he did to them. In response, Vidor welcomes it. For the fight that follows, Vidor would get a life sentence for attempted murder. For the short time he spent on screen, he would get 2 death sentences, a life sentence, and 500 trillion in fines. Lucan would share a very similar sentence as Vidor. He surfaced the Great Purge and accompanied Vidor to interrogate Alan, giving him the death sentence for the mass murder and a life sentence for the attempted murder. He would also get a death sentence and the fines for decimating Thraxia. After massacring countless civilians by himself, Lucan went to search for Nolan's son and found him in a cave system called the Caves of Roclane. He greeted the Invincible with a simple ultimatum to prove himself worthy of joining the Empire by fighting well against him, or else he would die. Before the battle could begin, he learned that Nolan had another son with a Thraxan named Andressa. He also proved his intent to kill Andressa and Oliver. Invincible attacked him and gave Andressa and his young half-brother a chance to escape. Due to Invincible holding back his true strength, Lucan almost kills him until Nolan arrives to save him. Vexing the deserter for having dishonored his people, the two of them battled one another, which led to Nolan impaling Lucan to a wall with a pike, presumably killing him. For this fight, he would get 4 life sentences for first-degree attempted murder. After Nolan and Mark had seemingly killed Thula and Vidor, they believed they had won, though splattered with blood. However, Lucan was still alive, holding his own intestines. He hurriedly flew in and broke Nolan's back, mocking the latter about the importance of ensuring your enemy is dead. He then contacted his superior that their mission was complete before falling unconscious.
Mark, are you okay?
No.
Don't worry, it's over.
Dad!
Next time you kill somebody, make sure they're dead. It's done.
This would be considered aggravated assault, adding another 25 years to his sentence. In total, Lucan would have 2 death sentences, 5 life sentences, 25 years in prison, and 500 trillion in fines. Thula would complete his gang of 4. She was present for the Great Purge, interrogating Alan in the Battle of Thraxia. She would get 2 death sentences, 2 life sentences, and 500 trillion in fines. The final boss fight we see in the show is Conquest. Now, he could get the death sentence for mass murder. In late 2023, during her inspection of Earth, Anissa alludes to Invincible that Conquest, a far less reasonable but far more powerful Viltrumite warrior, will soon arrive to hopefully see Invincible obeying the Empire. If not, the world would pay the price of his poor judgment. She prayed that Mark's mindset would change by then. Consequently, Invincible began an intense training program with the Global Defense Agency to prepare for the impending invasion, resulting in his strength being enhanced more than ever, possibly rivaling that of Anissa's. In early 2024, several months after Anissa's reconnaissance, in the aftermath of the Invincible War, Conquest made his presence known to Invincible Invincible to confirm his allegiance and officially pass judgment on both him and the entire planet's population. For the exchange that followed, Conquest would be charged with coercion for 5 years. Traumatized and engulfed in rage from the numerous losses he just faced, Invincible ironically shows appreciation for his arrival as he longed to strike something hard. Conquest joyfully responds to his challenge by engaging him in a wide battle across the devastated city. He goes on to kill 13 people, taking 13 charges of manslaughter, totaling to 560 years. As for the property damage, the city was already devastated during the Invincible War, and the initial damage that was caused by Conquest would total to $500,000. But as the fight progresses, he would cause mass manslaughter and widespread property damage. This would raise the total amount to be $253,500,500,000 in compensation. During all of this, an estimate of 2,400 people would be inside buildings or in the surrounding area, killing them all. This would add 2,400 life sentences to his list. Oh, and add another death sentence. Out of nowhere, Kid Omni-Man showed up to help his older sibling. Oliver hurried in to rescue his brother from imminent demise. Consequently, Conquest chose to focus on him. After literally knocking Invincible aside, Conquest nearly killed Oliver, seizing him by the head and legs, pulling the boy to rip him apart, but was rescued by a revived Invincible.
When I am done with you, I am going to kill everyone else. We're not done yet.
Soon after, Cecil and a paramedics team arrived to extract Oliver from the combat zone. This scene would earn him another death sentence for first-degree attempted murder. He would go on to kill 150 people when driving Invincible through a city, just like Omni-Man did, adding to his life sentence count. In the final scenes of the fight, a completely healed Adam Eve, who sustained injuries during the Invincible War, came to help in the battle. Intrigued by the latest arrival, Conquest directed his efforts towards eliminating her, but Invincible stepped in, causing Mark to sustain severe injuries. He breaks Invincible's leg, earning him an assault charge with grievous bodily harm, adding 2 years to his list. Then he ridiculed Mark's kindness towards the weak. Adam Eve created a piece of armor to fight Conquest. She immobilized him in mid-air by increasing the air's density, providing her with a small edge. Nevertheless, Conquest noted that her laborious breathing wouldn't allow her to sustain this exertion for much longer. In spite of her best attempts, the veteran dismantled her armor before striking a nearly lethal blow that split Adam Eve's face in half. He then thrusted his hand into her body, stunning Invincible immensely. Invincible caught her as she fell and started crying for Cecil to assist. This would give him a second-degree attempted murder charge. In the end, as the final chapter closes, he gets 3 death sentences, 2,551 life sentences, 567 years in prison, and $253,500,500,000 in fines. With everyone now essentially executed for spending their life in custody, I wonder if Invincible will finally get some rest. And if you enjoyed this video, then take a look at the video on the screen where we go over every single death in Invincible.